Most people believe earning more money is the solution to becoming wealthy. They chase promotions, negotiate raises, and switch jobs for higher salaries. Yet, somehow, the bank account never grows proportionally. The person making $150,000 often feels just as financially stretched as they did at $60,000. This isn't a discipline problem or a budgeting failure. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how wealth actually works. Income and wealth are not the same thing, and treating them as interchangeable is the reason most high earners remain financially vulnerable their entire lives. The confusion begins with a simple equation that almost everyone gets wrong. People assume wealth equals income minus expenses. They believe the primary lever is earning more, then controlling spending enough to have something left over. But this model ignores the most critical variable, the velocity of money. Wealth is not about how much flows in. It's about how much stays and multiplies. The wealthy understand that money sitting idle loses value, money spent disappears, and money invested compounds. The game isn't about accumulating dollars. It's about accumulating assets that produce more dollars without additional labor. When income increases, something predictable happens. Lifestyle expands to match it. The psychological term is hedonic adaptation, but the financial term is lifestyle inflation. A person making $50,000 lives in a one-bedroom apartment, drives a used car, and eats at home. Then income doubles to $100,000. Suddenly, the same person needs a two-bedroom in a better neighborhood, a newer car with lower mileage, and dinners at restaurants that take reservations. The math feels logical at the moment of each upgrade. The apartment is only $400 more per month. The car payment is manageable. The restaurants are still casual, not fine dining. But the cumulative effect is brutal. The gap between income and expenses stays proportionally the same, and sometimes it even shrinks. Most people miss the structural reason this happens. Higher income triggers exposure to higher cost social circles, neighborhoods, and expectations. The person making $100,000 is no longer comparing themselves to someone making $50,000. They're comparing themselves to colleagues making $150,000. Neighbors with luxury cars, and friends taking international vacations. Social comparison is not a personality flaw. It's a cognitive mechanism that operates automatically. The brain doesn't evaluate financial success in absolute terms. It evaluates relative position. So even as income climbs, the feeling of financial security stays out of reach because the reference group keeps shifting upward. The better model starts with a different equation. Wealth equals assets minus liabilities, multiplied by time and rate of return. This reveals that income is only useful to the extent it can be converted into assets that appreciate or generate cash flow. The person making $60,000 who saves and invests $15,000 per year is building wealth faster than the person making $150,000 who saves $10,000. The absolute income number is irrelevant. The savings rate is everything. And savings rate is not a function of how much someone earns. It's a function of the gap between earnings and fixed lifestyle costs. This is where most financial advice fails. It focuses on frugality and sacrifice, which creates psychological resistance. The brain interprets cutting expenses as loss, even when the cuts are objectively minor, but the real insight is more subtle. Lifestyle costs are sticky. Once adopted, they're difficult to reverse without feeling like a downgrade. The solution is not to cut aggressively after lifestyle inflation occurs. It's to architect a lifestyle that stays fixed even as income rises. This requires deliberate decoupling. When income increases by 20%, expenses should increase by 0 or close to it. The entire raise gets redirected into asset accumulation before the brain has time to adjust its baseline expectations. The math of this approach is dramatic. Consider two people who both start earning $60,000 at age 25. Next, person A increases their lifestyle proportionally as income grows, maintaining a 10% savings rate throughout their career. Person B locks their lifestyle at the $60,000 level and directs every raise into investments. By age 40, both are earning $120,000. Person A is saving $12,000 per year and has accumulated roughly $240,000. Person B is saving $72,000 per year and has accumulated over $900,000. The income trajectory was identical. The wealth gap is a factor of 4, and it will compound further over time. This is not a theoretical edge case. It's the primary mechanism that separates the wealthy from the high-earning but asset-poor. But income stability introduces another trap. Most people anchor their lifestyle to their current income level, assuming it will continue indefinitely. They finance cars over 5 years, sign leases, and take on fixed monthly obligations that require their full salary to service. Then income drops due to a layoff, business downturn, or health issue. Suddenly, the lifestyle that felt reasonable becomes a financial emergency. The person who is saving nothing now has to cut aggressively, often taking on debt just to maintain baseline expenses. Wealth, in contrast, creates optionality. The person with substantial assets can weather income disruptions without lifestyle collapse. They can take career risks, invest in skills, or start businesses without the pressure of immediate cash flow. Income feels like safety, but it's actually fragility disguised as stability. The tax system reinforces this dynamic in ways most people never examine. Income is taxed at the highest rates, often between 25% and 40%, depending on jurisdiction. Capital gains and dividends, the primary forms of wealth income, are taxed at lower rates, often between 0% and 20%. This is not accidental. Tax policy is designed to favor asset ownership over labor. The person earning $200,000 in salary pays significantly more tax than the person earning $200,000 from investments, even though both have the same cash flow. Over a lifetime, this differential compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional wealth for the investor. The system rewards those who convert income into assets quickly and penalizes those who rely on earned income alone. There's a psychological dimension that operates beneath these mechanics. Money that arrives as income feels temporary. It's deposited, spent, and replaced by next month's paycheck. The brain doesn't treat it as something to protect or grow. It treats it as something to allocate. Money that exists as assets, by contrast, feels permanent. It sits in accounts, compounds, and grows without active effort. The brain treats it as wealth, not cash flow. This perception shift is not semantic. It changes behavior. The person who sees money as income spends more freely because there's always more coming. The person who sees money as assets spends more carefully because they're protecting a finite store of value. The practical shift starts with a single behavioral change. Automate asset accumulation before discretionary spending occurs. When income arrives, a fixed percentage moves immediately into investment accounts, retirement funds, or other wealth-building vehicles. What remains becomes the budget for lifestyle expenses. This inverts the typical sequence, where people spend first and save whatever is left over. The inversion is critical because it treats wealth building as non-negotiable and lifestyle as flexible. Over time, this creates a psychological separation. Income becomes the fuel for asset growth, not the fuel for consumption. The brain stops evaluating lifestyle in terms of gross income and starts evaluating it in terms of post-investment income. The baseline resets, and lifestyle inflation stops automatically. Another leverage point is income diversification. Most people have one income stream, their salary. This creates a single point of failure. If that stream stops, wealth accumulation stops, and lifestyle becomes unsustainable. The wealthy build multiple streams: salary, investment income, side businesses, royalties, real estate cash flow. Each stream is smaller, but the aggregate is more stable and harder to disrupt. This also accelerates wealth compounding. Investment income can be reinvested, creating a feedback loop where assets generate cash that buys more assets. Salary alone can never create this loop because it requires ongoing labor. The shift from single-stream to multi-stream income is not a luxury reserved for the already wealthy. It's the mechanism by which people become wealthy in the first place. The mistake most people make is assuming wealth building is about extreme measures: living in a van, eating rice and beans, working 80-hour weeks. These strategies create unsustainable friction and usually fail within months. The real strategy is boring and invisible. It's earning $80,000, living on $50,000, and investing the difference for 20 years. It's saying no to the luxury car lease and yes to index funds. It's choosing the smaller house in the better neighborhood over the larger house in the average neighborhood. None of these decisions feel significant in isolation. Aggregated over years, they create a wealth gap that is functionally insurmountable for those who optimize for lifestyle first. There's a final layer most people never reach. At a certain asset threshold, wealth stops being about saving and starts being about allocation. The person with $50,000 in assets needs to save more. The person with $1 million in assets needs to allocate intelligently. The same 7% return on $50,000 adds $3,500 per year. On $1 million, it adds $70,000 per year, which exceeds the median household income without any labor. This is the inflection point where wealth becomes self-sustaining. Like income from assets exceeds expenses, and net worth grows automatically. Getting to this point requires years of disciplined saving, but once reached, the system maintains itself. The person who prioritizes income without asset building never reaches this point. They stay on the treadmill indefinitely, earning more, but never becoming financially independent. The core insight is that income is a tool, not a goal. It's only valuable to the extent it can be converted into appreciating assets that compound over time. The person making $60,000 with a high savings rate will outpace the person making $150,000 with a low savings rate every time. Wealth is not about how much flows through the hands, it's about how much sticks and grows. The shift from income-focused to asset-focused thinking is the single most important mental model in personal finance, and it's the one that almost no one internalizes until it's too late. This is part 1 of a series on how wealth actually works. The next video breaks down the asset allocation strategies that separate moderate wealth from generational wealth. Subscribe so the next one appears in the feed when it drops.